Vice President Kamala Harris has also been conferring with allies. We met up with her in Indonesia late last week for the ASEAN Summit, a network of nations in Southeast Asia. While we were there, our polling unit surveyed Americans about the job the vice president is doing back home. Her approval rating tracks similarly to President Biden's at 41%. Republicans have been focusing a lot of their attacks on Harris, highlighting that she would be in line for the job of president should anything happen to President Biden. And it is Republicans who say they have heard a lot about her work, more so than Democrats. Our conversation in Jakarta allowed us the opportunity to ask about her work and a lot more.
So you're 58 now. If you win a second term, as you and the president are running to do, he would be 86 at the end of it. And we are seeing Republican candidates hone in on you in particular as being next up for that job. Nikki Haley says
that a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for President Kamala Harris.
Chris Christie.
I want to be clear that I pray every night for Joe Biden's good health, not only because he's our president, but because of who our vice president is.
Ron DeSantis.
Harris is his impeachment insurance. People know if she were president, Katie barred the door. As bad as Biden did, it would get worse.
How do you respond to all of that?
We are delivering for the American people. And the reality of it is that, unfortunately, very few of those who would challenge our administration actually have a plan for America. You look at what we have accomplished, Margaret. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in America, 13 million new jobs, unemployment at record lows. We have capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, capped the cost of prescription drugs on an annual basis at $2,000.
They're talking
for
about
seniors.
What you would do as president as being a risk. They're honing in on you. Why do you think that is? How do you respond to those attacks? That's not about policy, that's about you.
Listen, this is not new. There's nothing new about that. I mean, listen, in my career, I was a career prosecutor. I was the first woman elected district attorney of San Francisco, a major city in this country, and reelected. I was the first woman attorney general of the second largest Department of Justice in the United States and reelected. I was a United States Senator. I represented 1 in 8 Americans, and I'm now Vice President of the United States. They feel the need to attack because they're scared that we will win based on the merit of the work that Joe Biden and I and our administration has done.
But even Democrats are worried about the president's age. The Wall Street Journal had a poll showing 2/3 of Democrats say Joe Biden is too old to run again. Are you prepared to be commander-in-chief?
Yes, I am, if necessary. But Joe Biden is going to be fine. And let me tell you something. I work with Joe Biden every day. Under Joe Biden's leadership, we have transformed and are in the process of transforming America's infrastructure with an historic investment in not only roads and bridges, but high-speed internet, what we are doing around issues like lead pipes, and I could go on and on.
Are you taking the threat of a second Trump presidency seriously enough?
I don't understand the question.
You were dismissive of some of the Republican criticism of you and the president. When you look at current polling, the front runner for a Republican nomination is the former president, the 45th president.
We will win re-election.
We will win
re-election. There is too much at stake, and the American people know it.
In terms of delivering on promises, you in your portfolio have tackled the issue of the root cause of migration. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol saw a record number of migrant families cross the border in the month of August, this despite that record level of heat. Why is that happening now? You've rolled out new policies.
Around the globe, we are seeing an increase in irregular migration. And there are a number of factors at play. An increase in authoritarian regimes, what we're seeing in terms of extreme weather, occurrences, what we're seeing in terms of, in many places around the globe, increasing food insecurity. So there are many reasons for why this is happening, and America is not immune to that. The point has to be then to understand what we must do to deal with, one, ensuring that we have a secure, humane, and orderly policy about the border, but also what we must do in the long term to address the root causes of migration. The work that I've been doing in that regard has been to build public-private partnerships to the extent that we have now raised over $4 billion to invest in the countries in that region.
But that migration data, according to CBP, is showing migrants from Guatemala are up, Honduras, Ecuador, Peru. So when the border crossings went down earlier in the summer, the administration said it was due to your policies working. Now they're going back up as they did in the month of August. Does that show the strategy is no longer working?
Absolutely not. What it means is that we have to stay focused on a number of issues related to the irregular migration that, again, we're seeing around the world, and America is not immune.
Do you think the strategy is working, despite the numbers being up?
Overall, we are seeing progress. But we're not going to have a constant. There are going to be fluctuations. That is normal, just like the weather fluctuates and circumstances fluctuate, such as elections in those regions and what that might mean. It doesn't mean that we keep our foot off the gas. We have to stay focused and understand there has to be a long-term strategy as well as a short-term strategy.
So was it too early to say that the strategy was working when the numbers went down?
My point is that focusing on root causes and doing the work that we have been doing to bring U.S. investment into those countries in a way that is supportive of their economies and supportive of fighting corruption actually works.
You have been very active on the issue of abortion and rallying behind the idea of this federal law to restore what was upheld in Roe versus Wade. But to do that, Democrats need 60 votes in the Senate. They need a majority in the House they don't have. They need the presidency. The math doesn't add up. So don't you need to level with the American people and say this is not a realistic promise to make for 2024?
Congress has the ability to put back in place the rights that the Supreme Court took from the women of America.
In theory, it doesn't have the votes to do that.
That's why we have elections. And that's why we are seeing around this country that when this issue is on the ballot, from Kansas to California, people vote in favor of upholding basic freedoms. The vast majority of Americans agree that the government should not be making this decision for the women of America.
What is it that you believe? I mean, what week of pregnancy should abortion access be cut off?
We need to restore the protections of Roe versus Wade.
We're
not trying to do something new.
Well, that was nebulous because it was about viability, which could be anywhere between 20 to 24 weeks. And
so no. Let me be very clear.
The Women's Health Protection Act that the White House also endorsed.
Let me be very clear. From day one, the president has been clear. I have been clear. We need to put back the protections that are in Roe v. Wade into law. Since the Supreme Court took it, Congress has the power and ability to pass legislation to put those protections back in law, and Joe Biden will sign that bill. So that is what we want.
But does it need to be specific in terms of defining and where that guarantee goes up to and where it does not? At which week of pregnancy?
We need to put back in place the protections of Roe versus Wade.
You know why I'm asking you this question, though, because
we're not trying to do anything that did not exist before June of last year.
It wasn't crafted into law, and that's why I'm asking you for the specifics there, because Republicans say the lack of a precise date in cutting it off. You know this. They say that allows Democrats to perform abortions up until, birth.
Which is ridiculous.
Statistically not accurate.
And it's ridiculous, and it's a
that.
mischaracterization of the point. No, the point is...
But
the
do
point
you need
is
to be
we
more
have
precise?
I am being precise. We need to put into law the protections of Roe versus Wade, and that is about going back to where we were before the Dobbs decision.
But if there is the possibility through legislation to provide any kind of guarantee at the federal level, any kind of protection, like the Republican proposal of 15 weeks protection.
The Republicans
Is
are
it
also
worth doing something?
members of the Republican Party are also proposing a national ban. The thing that
I'm talking about the Lindsey Graham bill, as you know, and those proposals of giving some access, though that's 15 weeks. Why do you think it shouldn't be specific? Out in New Mexico, for example, the governor there says it shouldn't be nailed down to a week because it should be a private matter between a woman and her doctor. There shouldn't be a precise number put on that. Is that what you believe as well?
I believe that we should put the protections of Roe v. Wade into law, and the way that will happen is if we have a United States Congress who, regardless of their personal view for themselves or their family, would agree that the women of America should be trusted to make decisions about their life and their body based on what they know to be in their best interest. It's that simple.
We'll have more of our interview with the Vice President in our next half hour. We'll be back in 1 minute. Stay with us. Although it was not surprising that Vladimir Putin would skip the G20 summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping's absence was noted, both there and at the ASEAN summit. President Biden told reporters today in Hanoi that he was concerned China was, quote, changing the rules of the game, and that he met with Chinese Premier Li Qiang, who did attend both meetings. Here's more of our conversation with the Vice President.
China's rewriting the global order. Your national security strategy says they are the only power in the world with the intent and the ability to do that.
There's no question that we are very concerned about the Chinese government's actions on the South China Sea and how that is impacting the security and the future prosperity of the nations that are affected. For example, I was recently in the Philippines, and I've been spending a lot of time with President Marcos. What is happening in terms of unprovoked actions against the Philippine interest in the South China Sea is significant, and we have been very clear that we stand with the Philippines.
They're a treaty ally. The U.S. would have to militarily defend them.
Not only is there a treaty relationship, but the very basic issue that the American people will experience and feel if we're not on top of it is what that will mean in terms of commerce flowing freely through those waters.
How concerned are the leaders you spoke with here about the potential for a military clash?
I think the issue that is most present here among the Southeast Asian leaders is that there be a respect for and enforcement of international rules and norms, but they hope that there will be an avoidance of conflict. And that there is a great symmetry between that and our policy toward China. We do not invite conflict, but we absolutely are prepared to and engaged in what is necessary to compete.
So when President Biden said the other day that China was a ticking time bomb, he was talking about their current economic problems that they are experiencing. He said that's not good because when bad folks have problems, they do bad things. What is the scenario that you are thinking about and worried about the most?
We, as the United States, and our policy is not about decoupling, it is about de-risking. It is about understanding.
It's not about pulling out U.S.
It's not about pulling out, but it is about ensuring that we are protecting American interests and that we are a leader in terms of the rules of the road, as opposed to following others' rules.
But President Biden was, I think, he was talking about the economic problems within China right now. He seemed to be suggesting that Xi Jinping might take some kind of action.
It's no secret that China is experiencing economic problems. And what you will find is, certainly in my conversations with American business leaders, is that they are looking at the future in terms of their capital investments and taking into account which countries are engaged in practices that are about abiding by the rule of law and international rules and norms in a way that they can be guaranteed that there will be some stability so they can make long-term investments. There is increasingly an understanding that China may not be the best bet when you are looking for stability, when you are looking for an investment in a place where there is an adherence to and respect for international rules and norms.
This November, the United States will host a big summit of leaders in San Francisco. China said a few days ago, their state security service, the U.S. needs to show sufficient sincerity before Xi Jinping agrees to visit. How important is it for Xi Jinping to come to America in November?
Well, it is important to the order of things, if you will, the stability of things, that we keep open lines of communication.
You were in the same room with China's number 2
yes,
today.
I have, and I have actually met with President Xi as well.
Did you talk to him today?
Well, we exchanged pleasantries, yes. Yes.
But it's still a little tense.
I don't think it's as simple, if you will, as whether there's tension. Yes, there's tension when you are in a competition of any sort, but that does not mean that we are seeking conflict.
Right.
And I think it's important to not conflate the two. Do we have disagreements, for example, very serious disagreements about what's happening in the South China Sea? Yes, and we're very clear about that. So one could argue that there's tension there, but you look, for example, at trade, 99% of our trade is not influenced by what we are doing in terms of the restrictions on exports.
So you want Xi Jinping to come in November?
I think he is absolutely an important player in this region of the world, and if he comes, then that will be, I'm sure, something that could be productive.
North Korea's Kim Jong-un, as you know, is expected, according to U.S. intelligence, to go meet with Vladimir Putin in Russia in exchange for some military support potentially here. How destabilizing would that be for Asia?
I think it would be a huge mistake. I think it would be a huge mistake. First of all, when you look at Russia's unprovoked war on Ukraine and the idea that they would supply ammunition to Russia, well, it's predictable where that ends up. I also believe very strongly that for both Russia and North Korea, this will further isolate them.
Some of the most sanctioned countries in the world at this point.
But at some point, it's just a step too far.
What is that step too far? I mean, what is it that Kim Jong-un is seeking? Is it nuclear submarines, as our allies in Seoul have said they're concerned about? Is it satellites? What does that do here in Asia?
Our allies are telling us about their concern about what's happening in terms of North Korea. We are all absolutely clear and unequivocal about our goal of the complete denuclearization of North Korea. But when we think about Russia's aggression in Ukraine, many, and most, are very clear also. It's an absolute violation of one of the most important agreements that we have around the world in terms of international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And Margaret, on that matter, it is very clear that Russia has clearly, they're very desperate. They have already experienced a strategic failure. So clearly this is an act of desperation on the part of Russia. But it would be a huge mistake for Korea to do this, for North Korea to do this.
Our full interview with the Vice President is on our website and YouTube channel.